My name is Daniel Bushman, but everyone calls me Bush. At 39, I've learned that life has a twisted sense of humor, especially when it comes to marriage. I work as an IT consultant in our quiet Midwest suburb, fixing other people's problems while my own life slowly unraveled without me even knowing it. Sandra, my wife of 12 years, always had this way of making everything about her. She planned events for a living, corporate parties, fancy dinners, the whole 9 yards. So naturally, our 15th anniversary had to be a production. Not a quiet dinner for two, mind you, but a full spectacle at Romano's, the most expensive restaurant in town, with half her social circle in attendance. "Bush, you're going to love this," she said that morning, applying her makeup with the precision of a surgeon. "I've invited Tasha, Chloe, and a few others. Oh, and Rick will be there too." Rick. Always Rick. Rick Lawson, the 41-year-old fitness coach who had somehow become Sandra's best friend over the past year. Every conversation, every story, every laugh seemed to circle back to Rick. When I'd raise an eyebrow or make a comment, Sandra would wave me off with that practiced smile. "Don't be jealous, Bush. Why are you so nervous? You're misunderstanding everything. Rick's just a friend. I see him like a brother. There's nothing romantic between us." A brother. Right. Because I definitely spent 3 hours texting my sister every night and met her for coffee twice a week. But Sandra had perfected the art of making me feel crazy for even questioning it. Every time I brought up their relationship, she'd flip it back on me. "You're being paranoid," she'd say, her voice taking on that patient tone she used with difficult clients. "Rick is married to Natalie. He's a good friend who understands my work stress. Why can't you just trust me?" Trust. That word had become a weapon in our house, something she wielded whenever I dared to question the obvious. But I'm not stupid. I notice things. Like how she'd suddenly developed an interest in fitness after years of mocking my gym membership. How she'd started dressing differently, tighter clothes, more makeup for casual outings. How her phone had become permanently attached to her hand, screen down on every surface. The anniversary dinner was supposed to be a celebration, but as I sat in Romano's that evening, watching Sandra laugh at Rick's jokes while barely acknowledging my presence, it felt more like a funeral. My funeral. "So, Bush," Tasha said, her voice cutting through my thoughts. "Where's your mystery date? Sandra said you were bringing someone special." I looked across the table at my wife, who was grinning like she'd just told the world's funniest joke. "Oh yes," Sandra chimed in, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Who's your mystery guest, honey? Not your mistress, I hope." The table erupted in laughter. Everyone except Rick, whose face had gone pale as he stared at the restaurant entrance. I followed his gaze and felt something cold settle in my stomach. Walking toward our table was a woman I'd never met in person, but had been texting with for the past week. Natalie Lawson, Rick's wife, the woman who had reached out to me with photos and evidence of what our spouses had been doing behind our backs. "Actually," I said, standing up as Natalie approached, "I'd like you all to meet someone very special." Sandra's smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her composure. "Well, don't keep us in suspense." I placed my hand on Natalie's shoulder as she reached our table. The silence was deafening. Rick looked like he might vomit. "Everyone," I announced, my voice carrying clearly across the restaurant, "I'd like you to meet Natalie Lawson, Rick's wife." The laughter died instantly. Sandra's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, then pure terror. Rick had gone completely white. "And Natalie," I continued, enjoying every second of the mounting tension, "this is my wife Sandra. You know, the woman who's been sleeping with your husband." The silence that followed was beautiful. You could hear the soft jazz playing over the restaurant's sound system, the clink of silverware from other tables, the quiet murmur of conversations that hadn't just imploded. But at our table, nothing. Just 8 people frozen in a moment of pure, crystallized shock. Tasha's mouth hung open, her Instagram-ready pose forgotten. Chloe looked between Sandra and Rick like she was watching a tennis match. The other guests, Sandra's work friends and a couple from our neighborhood, seemed to be processing what they'd just heard. Rick was the first to move. He pushed back from the table so hard his chair nearly toppled over. I need to..." He gestured vaguely toward the exit, but Natalie stepped into his path. "Sit down, Rick," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, controlled, but I could see the fury burning behind her eyes. "We're not done here." "Natalie, I can explain," Rick started. "Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories." "Explain what?" Natalie's voice rose just enough to catch the attention of nearby tables. Explain how you told me you were working late every Tuesday and Thursday? Explain the receipts I found for hotels I've never been to? Or maybe you want to explain this?" She pulled out her phone and placed it on the table. The screen showed a photo of Rick and Sandra in what was clearly a hotel room, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing at something off camera. Sandra finally found her voice. "Bush, can we please discuss this privately?" "Oh, now you want privacy?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "After you've been parading your affair around town for months? After you invited your lover to our anniversary dinner?" "He's not my—" "Stop." The word came out harder than I intended. "Just stop with the lies, Sandra. We're past that now." I looked around the table at the faces of people who had been our friends, our social circle, our community, people who had probably known or suspected what was happening and said nothing, people who had smiled at me at barbecues and dinner parties while my wife was making a fool of me behind my back. "Sandra," I said, standing up. "Kitchen, now." Romano's had an open kitchen concept, but there was a small corridor near the restrooms where we could talk without the entire restaurant watching. Sandra followed me, her heels clicking on the tile floor like a countdown timer. The moment we were alone, she fell apart. "Bush, please, you have to listen to me," she said, tears streaming down her carefully applied makeup. "It's not what you think. Yes, Rick and I got close, but it was never supposed to happen. I was confused and lonely and—" "How long?" I interrupted. "What? How long have you been sleeping with him?" She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of mascara. "It only happened a few times. I swear to you, Bush, it meant nothing. I love you. I want to work this out." "How long?" 6 months, she whispered. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of gaslighting, of making me feel crazy for trusting my instincts. 6 months of coming home to kiss me hello after being with another man. 6 months of planning our anniversary dinner while screwing her brother behind my back. "I'm sorry," she continued, reaching for my hands. "I'm so sorry. I'll end it with Rick. I'll do whatever you want. We can go to counseling, we can take a trip, we can sign the divorce papers." "What?" I said sign the divorce papers. I had them drawn up yesterday. They're in my car. You can sign them tonight, or we can do this the hard way through lawyers. Your choice. Sandra's face crumpled. "Bush, please don't do this. Think about everything we've built together. Our house, our life, our friends." "Our friends?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean the people sitting out there who probably knew about your affair and said nothing? Those friends? They didn't know?" "Bullshit. Look at their faces, Sandra. Nobody was surprised except maybe Chloe, and that's only because she's too self-absorbed to notice anything that doesn't directly affect her." I could hear voices from the dining room getting louder. It sounded like Natalie was having her own conversation with Rick, and it wasn't going well. "I won't sign anything tonight," Sandra said, her tears giving way to anger. "You're being cruel and vindictive. This is our anniversary, for God's sake." "You're right," I said. "It is our anniversary. The anniversary of the day we promised to be faithful to each other. How's that working out for you?" I turned to walk back to the dining room, but Sandra grabbed my arm. "If you do this," she hissed, "if you humiliate me like this, I'll make your life hell. I'll take half of everything you own. I'll tell everyone you were abusive, controlling." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm telling you the truth. You think you're so smart, bringing Rick's wife here, making a scene, but you have no idea what I'm capable of." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I have a pretty good idea." I showed her the screen, a recording app, active for the past 5 minutes. "Thanks for the confession, Sandra, and the threats. My lawyer is going to love this." Her face went white. "You recorded me?" "Illinois is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. Didn't you know that? I thought you were smart enough to research these things before you started making threats." I stopped the recording and put my phone away. "The divorce papers will be ready tomorrow. You can sign them voluntarily, or we can let a judge decide how to split our assets. But either way, this marriage is over." The ride home was silent. Sandra sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window while I drove through the familiar streets of our neighborhood. The same streets where we'd walked our dog before he died 3 years ago. The same streets where we'd talked about having kids someday, back when I thought we wanted the same future. "Where am I supposed to go?" she finally asked as I pulled into our driveway. "That's not my problem anymore." "This is my house, too." "Actually, it's not." I turned off the engine and looked at her. "The house is in my name. I bought it before we got married, remember? You wanted to keep your apartment just in case for the first 2 years? Turns out that was good planning." I could see her mind working, calculating, trying to figure out her options. I have rights as your spouse, which you'll have to argue in court. Tonight you're a guest in my house. Tomorrow you're a trespasser if you don't leave voluntarily. We sat there for another minute, neither of us moving. Finally, Sandra unbuckled her seatbelt. This isn't over, Bush. Yeah, it is. She got out of the car and walked to the front door, her heels echoing on the concrete. I watched her fumble with her keys, thinking about how many times I'd watched her come home from work events or girls' nights that I now realized were probably meetings with Rick. Inside, Sandra went straight to the bedroom while I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Thank you for tonight. Can we talk tomorrow? I was typing a response when Sandra came back downstairs with a suitcase. I'm staying at Tasha's tonight, she announced. Good choice. Tasha loves drama. She'll eat this up. Sandra paused at the door. You know what your problem is, Bush. You're bitter. You've always been bitter. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, if you'd made an effort. Stop. I didn't look up from my phone. Just stop. You don't get to rewrite history now. You cheated. You lied. You made me feel crazy for 6 months while you were screwing around behind my back. Own it. I tried to talk to you about our problems. When? When did you try to talk to me about problems? Because I remember you shutting down every conversation I tried to start about us growing apart. I remember you telling me I was being paranoid when I asked about Rick. I remember you making me feel like an idiot for trusting my instincts. She opened her mouth to respond, then seemed to think better of it. I'll be back tomorrow for more of my things. Call first, and bring a witness. I don't want any accusations about missing jewelry or damaged property. After she left, I sat in my living room, drinking bourbon and thinking about the past year. All the signs I'd ignored or rationalized away. The new clothes, the gym membership, the sudden interest in self-improvement. The way she'd started criticizing everything about me, my job, my appearance, my hobbies, like she was building a case for why she deserved better. My phone rang. Pete, my oldest friend, and the owner of Murphy's Bar downtown. Jesus Christ, Bush. Tasha just called my bartender. She's over here crying into a martini, telling everyone who'll listen that you ambushed Sandra at dinner tonight. That's one way to put it. What the hell happened? I gave him the short version. Pete whistled low when I finished. Damn, brother. I'm sorry. How long have you known? Suspected for months. Had proof for a week. Why didn't you call me? What were you going to do? Beat up Rick? Talk me out of it? I needed to handle this my way. Fair enough. But you know this is going to get ugly, right? Sandra's not going to go quietly. He was right, of course. Sandra had built her entire identity around being the perfect wife, the successful event planner, the woman who had it all together. Having that image shattered publicly would make her dangerous. Let her try, I said. I've got recordings, photos, witnesses. She can spin this however she wants, but the truth is the truth. What about work? You two have mutual clients. I hadn't thought about that. Sandra and I had referred business to each other over the years. Several of my IT clients used her for their corporate events. This was going to get complicated fast. I'll deal with it as it comes up. You need anything? Place to stay? Someone to watch your back? I'm good for now. But Pete, thanks for asking. After I hung up, I walked through the house, really looking at it for the first time in months. This place that had been our home, our sanctuary, our future. Now it just felt empty. Not because Sandra was gone, that was actually a relief, but because I was finally seeing it clearly. The expensive furniture she'd insisted on, the art she'd chosen without asking my opinion, the throw pillows that served no purpose except to look good in photos. How much of our life together had been about appearances? How much of our marriage had been Sandra playing a role rather than being herself? My phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Is this Daniel Bushman? Who's asking? This is Rick Lawson. We need to talk. I almost laughed. No, we really don't. Look, what happened tonight was messed up, but we're all adults here. Maybe we can work something out. Work something out? You mean like how you worked out sleeping with my wife? It wasn't supposed to happen, man. Sandra and I, we just connected, you know? Sometimes these things just develop naturally. I hung up. If Rick thought he could smooth talk his way out of this, he was even dumber than I'd given him credit for. But the call did make me think. Rick was going to be a problem. He had a business to protect, a reputation in the fitness community, sponsors who wouldn't appreciate being associated with a cheating scandal. Desperate people do stupid things, and Rick was about to get very desperate. The next morning brought the first real taste of what Sandra meant when she said she'd make my life hell. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from numbers I didn't recognize, but the pattern was clear. Sandra had been busy. The messages ranged from curious, "Hey, heard about last night, call me," to accusatory, "Can't believe you would humiliate Sandra like that," to outright hostile, "You're a piece of shit for what you did." I was reading through them when my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Sandra standing on my porch with two people I didn't recognize, a man in an expensive suit and a woman with a clipboard. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Bush, this is my attorney, Robert Chen, and a witness from his office. I'm here to collect my belongings." Chen stepped forward. "Mr. Bushman, my client has a legal right to retrieve her personal property. We'd appreciate your cooperation in this matter." "Of course. Sandra knows where her things are. Just remember, this is my house, and I'll be recording everything for my own protection." I pulled out my phone and started a video recording. Sandra's face tightened, but Chen nodded approvingly. "That's perfectly reasonable. We'll be quick and respectful." They spent the next hour going through the house while I followed at a distance, recording everything. Sandra took her clothes, her jewelry, her laptop, and various personal items. She also tried to take the coffee maker, the good silverware, and a painting we'd bought together on our honeymoon. "Those stay," I said when she reached for the painting. "We bought that together. With my credit card. I have the receipt." Chen made a note on his pad. "We'll address joint property in the settlement negotiations." "What settlement?" She cheated. "In Illinois, that affects asset division." "My client disputes your characterization of events." I almost laughed. "She disputes that she was having an affair? I have photos." "Photos can be taken out of context." "And recordings of her confessing?" Chen's pen stopped moving. He looked at Sandra, who had gone pale. "We'll need to review any alleged recordings to determine their admissibility." "One-party consent state," I interrupted. "I can record any conversation I'm part of. Your client confessed to a 6-month affair and threatened to make false accusations against me if I didn't drop the divorce. It's all on tape." The room went quiet. Finally, Chen cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss settlement terms sooner rather than later." After they left, I called my own lawyer, Margaret Goldstein. I'd found her through a colleague who'd gone through a messy divorce 2 years earlier. She was expensive, but she was also ruthless. "Daniel, I've been expecting your call. Word travels fast in our circle." "How much have you heard?" "Enough to know that your wife is already trying to control the narrative. She's claiming you've been emotionally abusive, that you set up an elaborate scheme to humiliate her publicly, that she's afraid of what you might do next." "She's afraid of what I might do? She's the one who threatened me." "Which is why that recording is so valuable. Email it to me immediately, along with any photos or other evidence you have." I spent the next hour forwarding everything to Margaret. The photos Natalie had sent me, the recording from the restaurant, screenshots of text messages between Sandra and Rick that Natalie had provided. "This is good," Margaret said when I called her back. "Very good. Your wife's attorney is going to push for a quick settlement once he realizes how much evidence we have." "What about her claims that I'm abusive?" "Empty threats. She has no evidence because it never happened. And threatening to make false accusations is actually a crime in Illinois. She's painted herself into a corner." After I hung up with Margaret, I decided to take a drive. I needed to get out of the house, clear my head, figure out my next move. I ended up at Murphy's bar, even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. Pete was behind the bar, polishing glasses. "You look like hell." "Feel worse. Sandra came by with her lawyer this morning." "Already? Damn, she doesn't waste time. She's telling people I was abusive, trying to make herself the victim." Pete snorted. "Anyone who knows you both will see right through that. Sandra's always been the one with the temper." He was right. Sandra had a reputation for being intense. She'd gotten into public arguments with vendors, neighbors, even waiters who didn't meet her standards. The idea that quiet, steady me was the abusive one would be laughable to anyone who knew us. "What's the plan?" Pete asked. "Divorce her, move on, try to rebuild?" "That's it? After what she did to you?" I looked at him. "What else would I do?" "I don't know. But if it were me, I'd want more than just a divorce. I'd want everyone to know what kind of person she really is." Pete's words stuck with me as I drove home. Sandra was already spinning the story, making herself the victim, painting me as the villain. By the time she was done, half our social circle would believe that I'd driven her into another man's arms through neglect and abuse. But I had something Sandra didn't: the truth. And in the age of social media, the truth could spread just as fast as lies. That evening, I sat down at my computer and began typing. Not an angry rant or a bitter screed, but a simple, factual account of what had happened. I included the timeline of Sandra's affair, the lies she'd told, the gaslighting she'd put me through. I kept it clean, professional, and verifiable. Then I posted it to Facebook, tagged our mutual friends, and waited. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments started pouring in within minutes. Some were supportive, others were shocked, a few were skeptical. But the overall tone was clear. People were taking my side. Tasha was the first to try to defend Sandra, posting a long comment about how there are two sides to every story and how I was being vindictive and cruel. But her defense fell apart when other people started sharing their own observations, times when they'd seen Sandra and Rick together, conversations where Sandra had complained about our marriage, instances where she'd been disrespectful or dismissive toward me in public. Within an hour, my post had been shared dozens of times. By the end of the evening, it had reached hundreds of people in our extended social network. My phone rang around 10 p.m. Sandra, crying. "How could you do this to me?" she sobbed. "How could you destroy my reputation like this?" "I didn't destroy anything," I said calmly. "I just told the truth. You're ruining my life. You ruined your own life when you decided to cheat on your husband. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. For 6 months? That's not a mistake, Sandra. That's a choice. You made a choice every single day to lie to me, to betray our marriage, to make me feel crazy for trusting my instincts. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences." She hung up on me, but the damage was already done. By morning, everyone in our social circle would know exactly what had happened. Sandra's carefully constructed image as the perfect wife and successful businesswoman was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. 2 days after my Facebook post went viral, I was grocery shopping when I ran into Chloe and Mark, another couple from our social circle. They'd been at the anniversary dinner, sitting close enough to witness the whole disaster unfold. "Bush!" Chloe called out, her voice artificially bright. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine. Thanks for asking." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, man, about what happened at Romano's." "What about it?" "Well, we've been friends for years, right? All of us. And this whole thing, it's just messy." I could see where this was going. "Messy how?" Chloe jumped in. "We think maybe you went a little overboard. I mean, bringing Rick's wife to your anniversary dinner? That was pretty harsh." "Harsher than my wife bringing her boyfriend?" "That's not... Sandra says they were just friends." "Sandra says a lot of things. Most of them are lies." Mark held up his hands. "Look, we're not taking sides here. We just think maybe everyone could have handled this more maturely." "More maturely." I repeated the words slowly. "You think I should have handled my wife's affair more maturely?" "That's not what we meant." "Well, there's talk around town. About your divorce. About the Facebook post. Some folks are saying you've been vindictive. That you're bad-mouthing Sandra to anyone who'll listen." I gripped the phone tighter. "Jim, I posted the truth. One time, after Sandra tried to paint me as the villain in front of half the town at our anniversary dinner." "I get that you're hurt," he said carefully. "But perception matters. A couple of our board members saw the post. One of them even works with Sandra on charity events. They're uncomfortable. They're asking if we should keep using someone who's airing personal drama so publicly." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You're dropping me because of a Facebook post?" "Not dropping you. Yet. I'm asking you to consider taking it down. Tone things down. Let people move on. If you can do that, we'll keep things as they are." I stared at the wall. Davidson Technologies was 40% of my income. Losing them would hurt. Badly. "I'll think about it," I said quietly. After I hung up, I opened Facebook. The post was still there, my calm, factual account of the anniversary dinner, the affair, the lies. It had over 300 comments, mostly supportive, some vicious toward Sandra, a few calling me bitter. I hovered over the delete button. Then I thought about Sandra laughing with her lover at our table while I sat there like a fool, about the way she'd cried fake tears afterward, telling everyone I'd overreacted. I closed the app without deleting anything. That night, I met my lawyer, Rachel Kim, for an update on the divorce. "Sandra's pushing for spousal support," Rachel said, sliding papers across the table. "She claims emotional distress from your online harassment. She's also asking for half your business, saying she helped build it with networking and moral support." I laughed, short and sharp. "She answered the phone twice in 3 years. That's her contribution." Rachel smiled thinly. "We both know that won't fly, but she's hoping to drag this out, bleed you dry on legal fees, force a settlement. Classic playbook. What's our move?" "We counter with the evidence. Texts, hotel records, the anniversary footage from the restaurant security cam. We also file for a quicker dissolution based on irreconcilable differences and her admitted infidelity. But Daniel, there's something else." She paused. Sandra's lawyer floated an informal offer. If you take down the post, issue a public statement saying you regret how things were handled, and agree to a quiet settlement, she'll drop the support claim and sign whatever you want. I leaned back. She wants me to lie again, to protect her image. Pretty much. No, Rachel nodded. Then we go to court, and we win. But it'll get uglier. She'll cry in front of the judge. Her friends will testify you're controlling, bitter. It'll be exhausting. I'm already exhausted, I said, but I'm done pretending. 2 weeks later, the hearing date was set. Sandra's business had taken a hit. 3 major clients canceled weddings, citing personal conflicts. Word was she was scrambling, borrowing money from her parents. Then came the message request on Facebook from Sandra herself. Daniel, can we talk? Just once. No lawyers. I think we owe each other that. I stared at it for an hour. Then I typed back, the brewery on 5th. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Public place. No scenes. She replied instantly, thank you. The next evening, she was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking smaller than I remembered. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing the old college hoodie she used to steal from me. She stood when I approached. Hi. Hi. We sat. She wrapped her hands around her glass like it was keeping her warm. I messed up, she said quietly. I know that. I know I hurt you in ways I can't fix. But Daniel, the post, the things people are saying, my business is dying. I can't even book a birthday party now. I waited. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she continued. I just want you to take it down. Let me have some dignity. Let me rebuild. And what do I get? She looked confused. Peace? Closure? I almost laughed. Sandra, you had 6 months of peace while you lied to my face every day. You had closure the moment you decided I wasn't enough. Now you want me to clean up your mess so you can move on unscathed. Her eyes filled. I didn't think it would go this far. You didn't think. Period. She wiped her cheek. People hate me now. Chloe and Mark barely speak to me. My mom cries every time we talk. I'm losing everything. You lost everything the day you chose to betray me, I said. The rest is just the world catching up. She stared at me for a long moment. You've changed. No, I stopped changing for you. She nodded slowly, like something had finally sunk in. I guess I deserve this. You do? She stood, leaving her drink untouched. I'll sign whatever you want. No support, no fight, just let me go. I didn't stop her. 3 months later, the divorce was final. I kept the house, the business, everything. Sandra got her clothes, her car, and the debt she'd racked up on secret credit cards. Her event planning website went dark. Last I heard, she'd moved 2 hours away, working admin for a dentist's office. Davidson Technologies stayed with me. Jim called one day, awkward again. Heard the divorce is done. Sounds like you handled it with class in the end. We're good. I didn't tell him I never took the post down. It's still there. Faded into the timeline now, but there. Some nights I scroll past it and feel nothing. Not triumph, not bitterness, just quiet. The house is mine now. I repainted the bedroom, got a new bed, planted tomatoes in the backyard like I always wanted. I'm dating someone new, Laura, a graphic designer who laughs at my stupid jokes and doesn't flinch when I talk about the past. Sometimes friends ask if I regret going public. I tell them the truth. The hardest part wasn't losing Sandra. It was realizing how many people wanted me to stay silent so they wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable. I don't regret refusing to be that man anymore. The best revenge wasn't destroying her. It was finally fully choosing myself. Well, Sandra has done several events for us over the years, and she's been reaching out to some of our people. She's claiming that you've been stalking her, that you're unstable, that she's concerned about her safety. That's completely false. I figured it might be. But she's also saying that you've been using your access to our systems to spy on her communications, maybe even steal client information. Jim, you know me. You know my work. Have I ever given you any reason to doubt my professionalism? No, you haven't. But these are serious accusations. I need to ask, have you used any of our systems for personal purposes? Absolutely not. I can provide you with logs, timestamps, whatever you need to verify that. That would be helpful. And Daniel? I'm sorry you're going through this. But I have to protect my business. I understood. Sandra was smart, and she was desperate. She was trying to destroy my professional reputation the same way I'd exposed her personal failings. The difference was that my accusations were true, and hers were fabricated. After I hung up with Jim, I called Margaret. She's escalating, I told her. making false accusations about my work, trying to destroy my business relationships. That's actually good news for us, Margaret said. False accusations in a divorce proceeding can backfire spectacularly, especially when we can prove they're false. How do we prove it? You said you can provide logs showing you haven't accessed client systems inappropriately. Yes. Get those together. Also, start documenting every contact Sandra makes with your clients. If she's systematically trying to destroy your business, that's harassment and possibly defamation. What about her claims that I'm stalking her? Are you? Of course not. Then we'll demand proof. Phone records, security footage, witness statements. When she can't provide any evidence, it'll be obvious that she's lying. That evening, I was putting together the documentation Margaret had requested when my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Rick standing on my porch, alone this time. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we really don't. Look, I know you're pissed and I get it, but this has gone far enough. Sandra's talking about pressing charges, claiming you're harassing her. Let her press charges. I haven't contacted her except through lawyers. That's not what she says. That's because she's a liar. You should know that better than anyone. You've been helping her lie for 6 months." Rick's face flushed. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Sandra and we connected, but we never meant to hurt anyone. You never meant to get caught. That's not fair. Fair. I stepped closer to him. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been Sandra asking for a divorce before she started sleeping with you. Fair would have been you keeping your hands off another man's wife. Fair would have been either of you having the decency to end your marriages before starting your affair. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You're both adults. You made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. Rick looked around nervously. Look, what if we could work something out? Some kind of arrangement where everyone gets what they want? What are you talking about? Sandra's willing to give you the divorce. Clean break, no contest. In exchange, you stop the social media campaign, stop talking to people about what happened. I almost laughed. She's willing to give me the divorce? How generous of her. I'm trying to help here. You're trying to save your own ass. How's business, Rick? Lose any clients lately? His face told me everything I needed to know. Rick's fitness business depended on his image as a family man, a role model, someone people could trust with their health and their goals. Having that image destroyed by a cheating scandal was probably costing him money. A few people have canceled, he admitted. But that's not what this is about, isn't it? You and Sandra both built your careers on your reputations. Now that people know who you really are, you're losing business. So you want me to help you cover it up. I want us all to move on. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to screw my wife. Rick's composure finally cracked. You self-righteous prick. You think you're so perfect? You think Sandra would have looked elsewhere if you'd been a better husband? There it is, I said. The real Rick. Not the smooth-talking fitness guru, but the guy who blames other people for his own choices. Sandra told me all about you. How you ignored her, how you took her for granted, how you made her feel invisible. And you believed her? The woman who lied to her husband for 6 months believed everything she told you about our marriage? That seemed to give him pause. Here's the thing, Rick, I continued. Even if everything Sandra told you was true, which it isn't, that still wouldn't justify what you did. If Sandra was unhappy, she should have talked to me or asked for a divorce. She shouldn't have started an affair with a married man. You're right, he said quietly. You're absolutely right. But that doesn't change where we are now. No, it doesn't. So here's where we are. Sandra and I are getting divorced. You and Natalie are getting divorced. Your business is suffering because people don't like cheaters. Sandra's business is suffering because people don't trust liars. That's called consequences. And you're just going to watch it all burn? I'm not watching anything burn. I'm just not helping you put out the fires you started. Rick stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. You just don't know it yet. After he left, I sat in my living room, thinking about the conversation. Rick and Sandra were getting desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. They were already making false accusations, trying to manipulate mutual friends, attempting to destroy my business relationships. How far would they go? The answer came 3 days later, when I woke up to find my car keyed and my mailbox knocked over. Someone had also thrown eggs at my front door, leaving a mess of shells and dried yolk on the paint. I called the police and filed a report, then set up security cameras around my property. If Sandra and Rick wanted to escalate this into vandalism and harassment, I'd make sure there was evidence. The cameras proved their worth that same night. At 2:17 a.m., they caught Rick creeping around my backyard, apparently trying to see into my windows. I called the police immediately. "Sir, we can send an officer to check the area," the dispatcher said, "but unless he's actually trying to break in or threatening you directly, there's not much we can do." "He's trespassing on my property. I have video evidence." "We'll send someone out." The police arrived 20 minutes later, but Rick was long gone. Officer Martinez took my statement and looked at the camera footage. "Do you know this man?" he asked. "Rick Lawson. He's been having an affair with my wife. We're in the middle of divorce proceedings." Martinez nodded. "Any previous incidents?" I told him about the vandalism and Rick's visit to my front door. He made notes in his report. "I'd recommend getting a restraining order," he said. "This behavior is likely to escalate." The next morning, I called Margaret and told her what had happened. "Perfect," she said. "This gives us everything we need. File for the restraining order today. I'll expedite the divorce proceedings. Sandra's attorney is going to want to settle quickly once he realizes his client's boyfriend is stalking you." The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following afternoon. I brought printouts of the security footage, photos of the vandalism, and documentation of Rick's harassment. The judge granted a temporary order immediately. "Mr. Lawson is to stay at least 500 feet away from you, your home, and your workplace," Judge Williams explained. "Any violation will result in immediate arrest." That should have been the end of it. But Sandra and Rick had one more card to play. I was leaving Margaret's office after signing the final divorce papers when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Daniel Bushman?" "Who's asking?" "This is Detective Sarah Chen with the County Sheriff's Department. We need you to come in for questioning regarding allegations of cyberstalking and harassment." My blood ran cold. "What allegations?" "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you come in this afternoon?" I called Margaret immediately. She met me at the Sheriff's Department an hour later. Detective Chen was a serious woman in her 40s with short gray hair and tired eyes. She laid out the allegations methodically. Sandra claimed I had been hacking her email, stealing client information, sending threatening messages from fake accounts, and using my IT skills to monitor her communications. "These are serious charges, Mr. Bushman," Chen said. "Cyberstalking is a felony in Illinois." "They're also completely false," I replied. "I can provide evidence that refutes every single allegation." Margaret leaned forward. "Detective, my client has been the victim of harassment and vandalism. We have video evidence of Mr. Lawson trespassing on his property. This appears to be a case of the actual perpetrators trying to deflect blame." "We'll investigate all allegations thoroughly," Chen said. "Mr. Bushman, I'll need you to provide access to your computers and phone records." "Absolutely. I have nothing to hide." The investigation took 2 weeks. In the end, Detective Chen found no evidence to support Sandra's allegations. My computer logs showed no unauthorized access to external systems. My phone records showed no contact with Sandra outside of documented legal communications. The threatening messages Sandra claimed to have received were traced back to a public computer at a library, a computer that security footage showed Rick using. "Your ex-wife and her boyfriend made false police reports," Chen told me when she called with the results. "We're filing charges against both of them." The final hearing was almost anticlimactic. Sandra sat at the defendant's table next to her lawyer, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Rick wasn't there. He'd already pled guilty to the harassment charges and was serving community service. Judge Williams reviewed the evidence, including the recordings of Sandra's confession and threats, the documentation of Rick's stalking behavior, and the police investigation into their false allegations. "Mrs. Bushman," the judge said, "your conduct throughout these proceedings has been reprehensible. Making false accusations against your husband, filing fraudulent police reports, and conspiring with your boyfriend to harass and intimidate, these actions speak to a pattern of dishonesty and manipulation that this court finds deeply troubling." Sandra's lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "The divorce is granted on grounds of adultery. Mr. Bushman will retain ownership of the marital home and all assets acquired prior to the marriage. Mrs. Bushman will receive only those assets she can prove she purchased independently." It was a complete victory. Sandra walked away with almost nothing, her car, her personal belongings, and a damaged reputation that would take years to rebuild. As we left the courthouse, Margaret shook my hand. "That's one of the most satisfying cases I've ever worked on," she said. "Your ex-wife thought she could manipulate the system the same way she manipulated you. She learned the hard way that the truth has a way of coming out." That evening I sat in my living room now, and reflected on the past few months. The marriage was over, the legal battles were finished, and Sandra was out of my life permanently. Rick had lost his business and his marriage. Their affair, which had seemed so exciting and romantic to them, had cost them everything. I thought about calling Pete, or maybe some of the friends who had supported me through the divorce, but instead I just sat quietly, enjoying the peace. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry or hurt or planning my next move. I was just free. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Saw the news about the court ruling. Justice served. Hope you're doing well. I typed back, thank you for everything. Hope you're finding peace too. And I meant it. Natalie and I had been thrown together by our spouse's betrayal, but we'd both handled it with dignity. We'd sought the truth instead of revenge, justice instead of vindication. The house felt different now. Not empty, but clean. Like I'd finally swept out all the lies and manipulation and pretense that had been poisoning the air. Tomorrow I'd start thinking about the future. Maybe travel, maybe dating again someday, maybe just enjoying being single. But tonight, I was content to sit in the quiet and appreciate how good it felt to be free. Sandra had threatened to make my life hell, and for a while, she'd succeeded. But in the end, she'd only succeeded in destroying herself. The truth had a way of doing that to people who built their lives on lies. I raised my glass of bourbon in a silent toast to new beginnings, then settled back to enjoy the silence of a house that was finally, truly mine.